Hey, this is Sandy.
And Randy.
And we're here on AT Corner.
Being an athletic trainer comes with ups and downs, and we're here to showcase it all.
Join us as we share our world in sports medicine.
Welcome back to another episode of AT Corner. For this episode, we hit a bunch of different topics, I'd say.
We definitely did. Primarily industrial setting, but I think the best thing that I liked about this episode was that it's not just for industrial athletic trainers. Like, you can get so much out of this in the traditional setting.
I was just about to say, like, the whole, like, data tracking, return on investment that we're going to talk about can definitely apply to any setting that you're in. So we were very lucky to have Michael Kahn as our interview guest. He is a licensed athletic trainer. He received his Bachelor of Science in Athletic Training from Temple University in Philly. That's where NATA is going to be this year. In case you were wondering. Yeah, in case you were wondering. He's been licensed for nearly 10 years. He's done a brief stint in an allied health clinic, several years as one-on-one personal trainer and fitness instructor. He is a PRN in the traditional setting, and he has spent 9 years as an industrial AT.
Which is really unique.
Yeah, for sure.
He is now in a managerial role.
Yes.
But he did start as what is it called? A site?
The only thing, yeah, like kind of like working at the site level, like actually doing more clinical work. So it was really nice to get both sides from him. He was able to kind of give us the managerial aspect of what he does and also what those site clinicians actually go through.
Yeah, so let's hear from Mike.
All right, let's do it.
All right, it's time we kick it off with some cryo breakers. So first one, what made you become an athletic trainer?
What made me become an athletic trainer? So look, in all honesty, my original goal was physical therapy. I think that could be a common one with a lot of athletic trainers. And looking into what the schooling could look like and being the impatient person that I could be, I wanted to get my hands on immediately as soon as possible. I was looking at prerequisites and pathways to PT school, and I came across athletic training, and I saw you got to work with athletes and athletics. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I like sports. And I saw that you get to do that clinical hands-on experience right away. So I'm like, sign me up. That'll be a good stepping stone into PT school. So that was the initial intent. And, through that, I kept trying to think about what I wanted to do. Did I want to do PT or not? And that's kind of like a whole separate story, but that's what it initially introduced me to athletic training. I didn't know anything about athletic training until I was looking at universities and what the programs were to get into PT school, and I came across that.
Nice, that's cool. That's what I've definitely noticed with athletic training is when you start volunteering to get hours, I feel like it's easier to find someone who will let you start getting hands-on and start doing things than some other professions.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I thought that's incredible that the program will allow students to get their hands on, essentially right from the get-go. You have your shadow observation hours, of course, but it's not too long before you can start to really learn hands-on, and that's such a great learning model. That's how I really like to learn best, and I'm sure many other people do. So, look, it was really fortunate. I saw it as a stepping stone into something else that I originally wanted, and then when I got involved in it, I kind of fell in love with it. And very similar to the industrial setting, which I know we'll talk about, I didn't know anything about it. I just wanted to start as a PRN to dip my toes in the water to see what it was all about, and fell in love with that immediately too.
I feel like a lot of people, especially when athletic training was primarily bachelors, I feel like we felt like there was a lot of stepping stone, but then people kind of stuck with it. They realized what athletic training is. So speaking of learning and practicing, Michael, what is your athletic training spirit animal? This is a modality, rehab tool, tape, braces, etc. tool of the trade that represents you as a clinician.
So this one's a little more outside the box, probably not a traditional actual modality itself, but the one thing that I absolutely love and I feel that I'm pretty good at, that I actually thrive in, is active listening and making a personal connection with the individual. So specifically during that initial intake, when they're coming to me trying to let me know what's going on, or they might not even know, but they're trying to figure it out, taking that as an opportunity to really make a connection, build a relationship, and really just listen to them. And when I say active listening, that is, it's in its purest form, listening with the intent to understand not listening with the intent to respond and speak back, right? But just listening with the intent to really understand, where's this person coming from? What are they trying to explain? What's their ailment? What's a potential injury? What are they trying to figure out here? And sometimes, especially in this setting, sometimes people are just looking for some kind of general support without realizing it. I think we can find ourselves a lot of times in these kind of red couch moments and acting more as a mental health support system and therapist in a sense. People just start to open up and tell you stuff. And I just love that. I really, really thrive in that situation. And I really focus in on that. So I'd have to say that'd be my spirit animal. If there's a treatment of sorts, it's just making that personal connection and listening to people.
People don't ever really think about, but in AT, man, you got to be a good listener.
Absolutely, yeah. Soft skills.
Because, there's time. Yeah. Because there's times you're not even like doing the eval, man, just doing treatments, and people forget we hear things. We know the buzz around teams, around workplaces. We know everything.
It's amazing how many answers are given to questions you've never asked. You just pick up on things. People tell you things, and from a kind of more technical standpoint as well too. I'm sure you both remember. I know I certainly do. Going through I don't even remember the name of the class, evaluation 101 kind of thing. 90% of the diagnosis or the assessment of trying to understand what the ailment is just listening. It's an intake. It's a history portion of it, right? It's just talking to the person, really listening to them. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I like how you said, like, when they come in, they may not know what they want or like what they're trying to say. And that really hit me because I'm like, yeah, that's true. Like, there's a lot of times, like, I'm just trying to help the athlete understand what they're trying to say. So, yeah, I really like that portion of it.
Or it just gets you more pieces to the puzzle that you're just the ongoing detective work you're trying to figure out.
I love that ongoing detective work. It is absolutely that. People don't know exactly what's going on with them, why something might hurt, especially in this setting. When you have to deal with workers' comp, they don't know if this is work related or non-work related, and it's not really our job to determine that either. But we are a steward in that moment where we can try to help them understand and try to help them uncover things of that nature, and again, really just try to help them understand what might be at hand. So it really is a great opportunity to, like you said, just hopefully educate them and help them become more aware of something as well too. It's a really great opportunity to connect with someone.
So at AT Corner, as you know, we like to pair evidence with also experience. So do you have a story, experience, or even a case study about working in the industrial setting or the occupational setting? It could be funny, serious, life hack, anything.
Go for it.
Yeah, I do. So this isn't anything too strictly for the industrial setting itself, but more just a professional setting and the business world and knowing how to manage yourself. And I like it because I could look back at it now and laugh at myself. It's funny, but there's some good learning experiences too. And I like this specific question too, because I just did this with a team building exercise with my team. I manage a team of 15 athletic trainers, and we like to do some icebreakers and team building exercise and ask them the same kind of question. So anyway, very early on, when I had started just a few months in, it's a client-based service. We're in client services. So the main client that we typically work with is a safety manager at a site. So this particular safety manager and I did not necessarily get along. There's a little bit of oil and water with our personalities, and there's some other things. I was very green. I don't think that she had particular patience for someone as green as me, and that wasn't a quick learner. So, all made for a not easy go at it to start off with. So in either case, there was some program or project that I know she was really harping on me for, and communicating in the way that she typically does, which was difficult for me. So in either case, I was essentially going to forward this to my superiors for support. It was a moment for me to vent because, look, we do an incredible job to support one another and create a safe space. And so I knew that. So I went to just forward the email to my superiors and kind of defend myself and show my stance on how I'd like to go from here. And in that, again, I was very much venting with this individual and what I didn't appreciate about them. And I just let them know exactly what my thought was. So in the moment of getting caught up in all these thoughts and what I think of her and just being, honestly angry and not in a good headspace, because I'm thinking about this person, I managed to put their name on the email. So I emailed the person directly exactly what I thought about them and all this kind of stuff and just let it all out there. I caught it as soon as I hit send. Granted, I didn't think or wasn't aware of recalling an email or how that would work or anything. And needless to say, it took a lot of phone calls with my superior and our like the boss's boss, and it took quite a while to smooth things over. Like I really stepped in it, you know. So again, I tell this story for a few reasons. One, it's just kind of funny, but you know, one thing is what I've learned, if you're sending sensitive information, because there will be emails and communication like that over so many years, it's going to happen. When you're sending sensitive information like that, draft your email, put the recipients on at the very end. Don't put the name in there and then start drafting your email. Draft your email, read through it, put the names on afterwards. Maybe take a few minutes if it's really that sensitive. If you're not in a great headspace, maybe take a day or two. Try to see if you can take a step back. But really the other thing is, you know, what I learned from it mostly is it was part of my maturation process. It was, you know, I can look back and reflect on that scenario with this individual and recognize that I still agree that there weren't things that I really appreciated or agreed the way that they operated, but there were things that I could have done better to help the situation to de-escalate rather than kind of lean into it. So that was part of my maturation process. And I think people could take that away with the professional setting, no matter where you are. If you're in the professional setting in any industry for so long, there's going to be personalities that don't mesh. How do you get the most out of that relationship, especially when you have to work with them? How do you, how you work with that person? You know, the best thing you could do is try to take a step back, active listening, try to understand as best as you can, and you can only control what you can control. And, really just learning how to be a little bit smarter with that and not really lean into things. Try to understand how to get the most out of those relationships that could be a little tumultuous. So that was a big learning experience I had very early on.
So that's probably one of the most difficult things for a new AT to learn is you can only control what you can control.
I feel like that personally and professionally.
Yeah.
That's tough to learn.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. The thing that did make me feel better because, I was scared for my position. I was embarrassed. It was a ton of bad things, right? The thing that made me feel better is I talked to some other people at the company that, had been there longer than me and, a little more seasoned. And they're like, dude, we've all sent an email like that. Like it's all happened. Like it sucks. It's not a great feeling. We've all been there. It'll be okay. So it felt a little good to know that I wasn't alone with it either.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's good.
We had yeah. done a story episode on our podcast about mistakes that people have made as a clinician. And it really shows a lot about you as a person and a clinician on how, when you make a mistake, like how you respond to that and what your next steps are and how you hold and compose yourself.
Absolutely. Look, everything's a learning experience. And if you can reflect on something and understand that you're always a part of it, what part of accountability can you take from something? Even as much as it might be easy to kind of point the finger, to someone else, what can you learn from it yourself? What's your takeaway and how can you kind of grow and develop from that? My boss has a saying that I've always really appreciated. I don't know if it's something he came up with or if it's something he read, honestly, but something he has preached to our team quite a bit regarding accountability is when you point a finger, you have one finger pointing out, but three pointing right back at you. And that just always really stuck with me. So, the accountability portion, what you could learn from, as you go through the professional setting is really important to reflect on what your part is.
Oh yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
So going into our main topic, we would love to know, you kind of touched on it a little bit when you were talking about management, but could you tell us what your role is in the industrial setting and kind of like how you got there?
Sure. So first I'll focus on what is typically done in the industrial setting for the site level clinician, because I have had quite a bit of transition from site level clinician work to more managerial support work and company projects, business development, and things of that nature. So from the more clinical aspect, there's really quite a few things. So a lot of times it's very industry dependent or client dependent on what they're looking for, what their pain points are, and what they really need, why they're coming for our services. So most of the time it's a little bit of everything. It's a little bit of everything that athletic trainers can do, honestly. So in this case, it's a lot of injury care. With injury care comes case management, supporting the cases from a workers' comp standpoint, and supporting a risk department. Typically, a risk department is who leads workers' comp cases, so supporting them. Then we do a lot with prevention. Prevention tends to fall within ergonomics, namely, but there's a ton of other things we could do from prevention. We support safety programs. So a lot of these large industries, they have really, really strict safety programs for things you might not even think of or be aware of. There's really strict regulations from OSHA regarding fall protection. What are the stipulations around working above 4 feet, for example? What are the stipulations for working surfaces? And, you could tie in anti-fatigue mats and things of that nature with that. So safety program support is essentially endless. There's just so many safety programs that might require some level of support from us. We might do medical surveillance testing. So that could be audiograms, hearing tests. We might do respirator fit tests to make sure respirators are fitting correctly. You could kind of equate that to some equipment, fitting and things of that nature. We do a bunch with wellness, which is very large and abstract. To think of holistic wellness, that could mean a bunch of things, but we might put on a wellness event. We might do a competition, like we might do a weight loss competition or a strength increase competition. And there's a good example I could refer to, later on. And then we do a lot of reporting. So in this setting, this is one of the things, just one of the many things I really like. The reporting is really, really cool here because we do a lot of tracking and trending, one, to understand what injuries we can anticipate and get ahead of the curve. But then we do a lot of tracking and trending of our services. And that just ties in beautifully to how we create value for ourselves as athletic trainers. That goes into such a large conversation. And, frankly, a pain point for the profession right now is the working conditions and competitive salary and schedule and things of that nature. How do we really demonstrate our value? How do we create value and demonstrate that? These ROI reports or return on investment reports is one of just many ways that we can really show our value. So at the site level, it could be a mix of all of that stuff, any of that stuff, any given day. It just depends what the day, what the week is bringing, where your goals are at that time and where your focus is. But you're really well versed in the setting, so you can do quite a bit.
Nice, that's pretty cool. I have a couple of friends who have kind of dabbled in the industrial setting, and some of the things they talk about, that sounds pretty cool. It sounds like a really cool opportunity.
Is there a lot of learning you have to do on the job?
Oh, a ton. So great example. The site that I've been at for nearly 10 years that I had transitioned out full time. It's been a slow transition, but I had just transitioned out full time about 4 or 5 months ago. So last year, almost a year ago, we brought on 2 new athletic trainers at pretty much the same time. Pretty good experience. One is about 10 years experience in the traditional setting. One is, I think, 5 or 6. I believe they were both mostly all college athletics. So, well experienced, very good athletic trainers, plenty of knowledge, right? Solid, very solid. It's quite a learning curve. Now, fortunately for them, they've been awesome with it. They've been really good. They picked it up much quicker than I did, honestly. I'm not necessarily a quick learner, what I'd call a quick learner. But, I just did an annual review for them this past week, their appraisal. And, we reflected on a lot about what they'd learned. And they both said, look, I feel like I'm learning something new every day. So, it's challenging in a good way. But yeah, to answer your question about the learning curve, it could be quite a bit. Number one, this is client-based services, so you have to keep that in mind. There's business needs. You need to understand OSHA, which is a little difficult, and sometimes just it makes you want to pull your hair out trying to wrap your mind around the logic there. But you need to understand OSHA guidelines really well. So, and then really the biggest thing is whatever industry, whatever site that you're at, a factory, a warehouse, wherever it might be, you really need to understand that job. That's like picture going to football and you knew nothing about football. You don't know anything about the game, nothing about the positions, the physical demands, nothing. So you need to learn that. You need to learn what the jobs do. What are their job tasks? What are the hazards and the physical demands? How their operations work? What's the operations here? You need to understand that so you understand how to make an impact. So there's quite a bit to learn there. Yeah, for sure.
So I don't work actually industrial, but I do dabble in performing arts in an employment setting. So we do have, I think kind of what you were saying kind of reminded me of, I grew up in a performing arts world. And so I knew the demands and stuff of that nature. But something that I had to learn on the job was the managers who I had to talk to. Who do I go to if someone is having a problem? I had to learn what a safety manager was. I had to talk to stage managers and talk about deviations and how contingency plans and kind of stuff that we don't see in normal traditional athletic training, but it is relevant to my work. So it's very similar to what you were saying. Like, even if you do have a good background, there is a lot that you do have to learn.
Hit the nail right on the head. So even though it's not the industrial setting, I think it mirrors very nicely to that same dynamic. You need to understand department managers, shift supervisors, and whatever the leadership team is, their hierarchy. Who do you communicate to? In what regard? How do you strategically plan and partner with them? Are you able to? In my experience, and not even just myself, but vicariously through my team, I'd say like a good strong 90% of leadership that we're engaging with at a client site is they're engaging and they want to be strategic partners. Sometimes, again, kind of personalities or work differences and how people want to operate. Sometimes it's hard and you really feel like you're spinning your wheels just trying to get engagement and people to respond to you and work with you. And that's tough. So to your point, yeah, I mean, you really need to understand all the players and how they operate, what their goals are, and how you kind of fit in there. And it's quite a bit of a learning experience then to figure that out, to be able to best work with these individuals.
So what does your typical day look like?
So at the site level, and look, I'm happy to answer anything on the managerial level as well too. I think most people would probably want to know, like, at the site level things as well. So I'm going to start there at least. So at the site level, again, it really could just depend what's going on for the day. You really need to plan for the unexpected. So you may have a plan to work on certain projects. You might carve out some time in your day to go onto the job site or onto the floor to perform an ergonomic evaluation. So that's where you're observing behaviors and trends, and then at either in that moment in real time or at a later time, looking to provide some coaching feedback on, lifting techniques, pushing, pulling techniques, whatever it might be. So you might be doing an ergonomic evaluation. You might be doing a job risk assessment, which is similar which is within the world of ergonomics, but that's looking at the job itself and just inherent risks. And that kind of helps us strategize and plan like some possible corrective actions to make the job safer. You might be doing some kind of wellness event or wellness competition. That's taking time. You might be, again, supporting one of many safety programs. You might be doing hearing testing. It just kind of depends what's going on. But then, oh, by the way, you have this plan to do all these things in the day, but then injuries happen. People get hurt. And most of the time, we're able to see people for an injury, whether it's work or non-work related. So someone may have come in from over the weekend from playing a pickup game of basketball and they went way harder than they should. They're not realizing their age, or, they have a buddy move or whatever the case is. People come in with aches and pains and ailments. Sometimes they just want wellness coaching. They want, a nutrition diet plan, or they want a running program. So you're there in your office or planning to get on the floor to engage with the team and do your work, but then someone comes in the room because they want to be evaluated for, any number of one, any of those instances. And, that kind of becomes a priority. When someone comes in the room, you want to make sure you're taking care of them. So that becomes a priority. So it's a little bit of everywhere. It just really depends what the day brings you.
Do you have a space to actually provide treatments? Like, do you have like an athletic training room, or you just have like a traditional office?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So yes, we do have dedicated space that is both an office and a clinic that we refer to. And that's actually probably the number one question we get for applicants and candidates when they're interviewing that are new to the setting. So that's a great question. Yes, we typically have a dedicated space that we use as a clinic, and it's also our office. Depending on the setting, you might hear different words. Like in the construction setting, we have athletic trainers in vertical construction. They're building skyscrapers and they support the workers there. There's a ton of injuries there. They call it their shanty because all the little trailers and mobile trailers that are constantly changing the space and the area, they just call it the shanty. So the athletic trainers there, they have their shanty, but it's the same thing. They have all the treatment modalities, and it's essentially a clinic that changes every few weeks or every few months.
That's cool. I never thought of having ATs at a construction site. I mean, it makes sense. That's really
It's a
cool.
physically demanding job.
Oh, big time.
Oh my gosh, it's going there to visit the site is absolutely incredible, and I give so much kudos to the team, the ATs that are there, and obviously, look, first the workers that are there, but then the ATs that are there. So I have a lot of managerial experience overseeing it and supporting the ATs from an operational standpoint, and then going to do site visits and meet with them and kind of discuss strategy. But the time and the work that they put into going to these job sites it's unbelievable. It's really impressive. I didn't think of that either, even being in this setting for a few years, and then I realized like, oh, okay, we're working with this industry now. That's really cool. I didn't even think about that. It's an awesome setting. It's really cool.
So how does that work? Do you guys usually work with just athletic trainers, or are there other healthcare professionals kind of on-site or off-site who you refer to?
Okay, great question. So again, very very site and client dependent. We have plenty of sites that utilize only athletic trainers, and depending on the size of the site or the needs of the site, it could be 1, 2, or maybe 3 athletic trainers. Maybe an athletic trainer is part time, or it's 3 full time, but it could look like that in any range there. We have a lot of sites that we have combination clinics, which is essentially different providers at one site. That could be an athletic trainer, it could be an EMT. It could be a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant. We do have a handful of medical directors. Now, the medical directors aren't on site, to my knowledge. They're more for the medical guidance and support. But as far as actual providers and clinicians on site, yeah, we have quite a few at our company. Again, athletic trainers, EMTs, advanced practitioners, which is nurse practitioners mostly, or maybe physician assistant as well. And we could have all of them at one site depending on what the client site is and what the needs are.
So with any, setting in athletic training, we're very used to having challenges. What would you say is a unique challenge for the industrial setting?
Going back to something I mentioned earlier, I think one of the largest things that I've noticed with new athletic trainers coming in, and certainly myself as well too, is just understanding, for lack of a better word that I know is a little open-ended, it's just business. Understanding business, how business works. That's not anything that we're traditionally taught. We're not really, I don't think we're really taught or educated on, general business practices and really how to create value for ourselves and show that value and how to plan in that regard. So, more than just business, it's kind of the client service aspect of it. We have to understand that we're in a client service business. So I think understanding that is kind of like the initial hurdle. And look, a lot of people are very, very successful with that. They get that pretty early on. And if they're fortunate enough, which again, we are, because I'd say overwhelming 90% of the people we're partnering with are very engaging and they want to partner with us, and they kind of show us the ropes like the client does, the safety manager, whoever. But understanding that's probably the initial hurdle to get through. And then understanding OSHA, again, there's just a lot of nuances to OSHA. That's something that just comes with time and experience. And as you're working and involved with different cases and supporting them, you learn things. I mean, I still learn things. I really do. So, OSHA guidelines and operating within the OSHA guidelines correctly and understanding proper documentation within those guidelines and things of that nature. I'd say those are kind of like the initial hurdles, probably. Really, the other thing, and this is a good challenge, Joe, I think this really, really challenges our critical thinking, and it forces us to become strategic planners. And it ties all back into some of those initial things I mentioned, within OSHA guidelines, and just understanding a brand new operation at a site versus athletics, for example, or maybe a PT clinic or some of these more traditional settings we're probably used to. Understanding a brand new operation, understanding a brand new sport and game, and just learning that. And it really forces us to be, again, critical thinkers and better strategic planners. So that's a big challenge, and that's a great challenge because I really think that helps us grow and develop, and it really helps the profession grow and develop as well too.
So along the lines of kind of like learning like OSHA guidelines, do you feel the professional AT programs could do a better job at maybe preparing certain professionals to enter the industrial setting? Because I remember from my education, we were still bachelors, so I like to think I'm still old school. I get to say that later on in the future. But like,
Yeah.
we never really talked about industrial setting very much in like the education stuff. Like our scenarios sometimes would be like, oh, you have, this employee who does this job. And like, we would have to use that. But do you think these programs could do maybe better course content for the industrial setting?
100%. I really do. And I mean, look, a lot of that's going back to kind of what you said, at least my experience that when I had gone through school, it just wasn't there. I mean, look, in all fairness, I don't know how much the industry was even there itself and really well known in complete fairness. But, look, with understanding the challenges that we have as a profession, we need to be thinking ahead. We really need to be thinking ahead and realizing what's out there and looking to have students be well informed. So yeah, to your point, I think that there's a huge opportunity there from universities. I think there's a huge opportunity there for associations to help promote and advocate for things of this nature, which really, in all honesty, is why I began this past year just reaching out to universities, going to people I know that have connections at universities, introducing this idea. And now, fortunately, the response has been overwhelmingly positive. Like, yeah, that'd be great. Let's have you as a guest speaker. Let's have follow-up discussions. I just had a proposal that was accepted for the Mid-Atlantic Conference coming up later this year to talk about creating value. So I think that there's a huge opportunity there for some of these institutions to provide that support, that awareness and education on it. I think we can be a big part of that to help show them that as well, too, because look, I've spoken to a handful of program directors or clinical coordinators that have said, I'm really interested in this setting, and I've started to introduce it a little bit and talk about it. I don't know it like someone like you or someone that works in the setting would. So we'd love to have you, as a guest speaker, for example. So I think that's a stepping stone. I think that's a really good sign that it's heading in a proper direction, that a lot of universities across the country are very interested in this. They recognize the benefit there. So I think that's a good first step. And I hope that continues to grow. And I think it will. It's going to take some time, but I think it's going to continue to grow to show more support and awareness for this setting.
I think too, along with the industrial setting growing, the more that we get, because our educators only know what they know, and it's great that they recognize that, and they are able to bring people like you in to talk about what your expertise is that's different from theirs. But I think the more that the industrial setting grows, and the more that we have people going into the industrial setting and then maybe becoming educators or kind of dabble in both, then you're going to be seeing a lot more of the introduction in university setting.
Yeah, I think so. I think so, and I certainly hope so. And, look, the more that we can provide awareness and education on it, I think that's what we're trying to do. I just want to make sure that people are well informed so they can make a well informed decision. And that's really why this became a passion project of mine, and why I've been so involved with this since last year. Is it's very easy to point a finger and complain about it. Going back to that original thing, I'm pointing a finger, there's three pointing back at me. Well, what am I doing? What part am I with that? I'm not actively engaging. I'm pointing out a problem that I think we all know is there, but no one has a magic wand that's just stepping right in to do it. So I decided to kind of step in to do something, and it's been excellent. I'm talking to universities, they're engaged. We're talking about creating a student placement program so we could have students come on site, and this could be part of a clinical rotation. So, we're really looking to build this out and, help people become more well-informed. Again, that's all it is. Have as much information at your fingertips as a student or young professional so you can make a well-informed decision.
Oh, let's go. That was actually kind of what I was thinking next, is like, oh, I wonder if this could be like a clinical rotation for an athletic training student, something different. And you get a lot of, I guess, on the job experience there before actually having to work it as an AT.
Yeah. I can't say for certain if other companies are doing this. I honestly don't know. I'm just proud that, us as a company, we'd recognize the benefit and the opportunity there, and they're all for it. So we're kind of currently working through that process. It's not officially signed off yet, but by all accounts from the feedback and discussions we've had, it seems like it's definitely going in that direction. We're just doing the whole back end process with crossing T's and dotting I's and things of that nature. But it seems like there's a really good opportunity at hand to get this thing kick-started in the next few months, probably, fall semester.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of talk about when athletic trainers get burnt out in the traditional setting, kind of moving towards the industrial setting. What are your thoughts on that? How do you feel about athletic trainers kind of moving towards the industrial setting after they've gotten burnt out? And how is there, do you see that there is also burnout in the industrial setting?
So regarding the first part, yeah, I mean, look, I recently saw a job post for a college in the Mid-Atlantic area, master's degree, assistant to the head athletic trainer, $32,000. I mean, come on, you know. Now, look, that's just one recent example. Like that is just, you know, a microcosm of the larger challenge here. And then you factor in, you know, what we bring to the table, our skill set, and then just not to mention the hours, you know, the pure hours and the schedule changes and you know, the unpredictability with schedules and all that stuff. So, you know, when it comes to burnout and things of that nature, I fully understand it. You know, for myself, I really don't have a ton. I have little to no experience in the traditional setting because going through school, I saw this as clear as day. Now, and that's not to say that others don't recognize it. I think, you know, from others I'm close with, you know, what they focus on is something they just purely, truly enjoy, which, look, is excellent. You want to enjoy your job and love your job and what you do. And they do. But now to your point, after so long goes by, so many years go by of doing that, maybe you're getting a little older, you want to start to slow down, start a family, things of that nature. You recognize this is really tough. Like, how am I going to make this work? Like, it's difficult to support myself. I don't know how I'm going to support a family. I'm burnt out. I'm tired. My schedule is all over the place. So I completely understand the burnout challenge here, 100%. Going to the industrial setting, for example, in this realm, I don't know that I really see any kind of burnout. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're still human and work days can feel long and they're mentally draining and taxing and things of that nature. But it's really invigorating when we have a lot of people on our team that have done X amount of years in the traditional setting, and they've been with us for a few years now. They're still doing it, and they might be talking about like, man, today was a tough day, or, you know, there's this challenge, and they always seem to finish it with, I'm still so happy to be in this setting though. Like it's just different. It's a different kind of burnout. It's more, and it's not a burnout. It's just a regular kind of challenges, right? So no, I don't really think that there's a burnout or any kind of fatigue in this setting. It is very largely 40 hours a week. In large part, you know your schedule, what it's going to be. Most of the time, it's like a morning daytime shift. Sometimes there might be a nighttime shift that you have, not like, you know, too late, but it kind of depends. But at the end of the day, again, you kind of know what your schedule is, and you know it's going to be 40 hours a week for the most part. I mean, that's a pretty sweet deal, and I don't think anyone appreciates it more than a traditional athletic trainer.
So one of the things that's really hard for some ATs to do is actually just show their value. You know, I feel like that's one thing in school that everyone talks about it, but no one really shows you like, well, here's what you do to show your value. You know, this is the stuff that you run and stuff like that. How do you guys show your value to these companies? Like, hey, this is why we're important. This is why we're a benefit to you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I love talking about this. So one of the really big things that we have organized and that we put in front of the companies is an ROI report, a return on investment. So that could look like quite a few things. It's pretty expansive and pretty robust. A lot of times what it will look like is on our EMR system, we're documenting the injuries that we have encounters with, how many days that they've been working with us. If they do go out, and not to get too far in the weeds on the OSHA side of things, but if they do go out of work or if they have their job modified, we're tracking all these things individually. If someone has a work injury and they don't have any of that stuff, they have a work injury, they continue to work at full duty capacity, but they work with us for their treatment, we track that separately as well too. So we're tracking all these individual metrics. We're tracking the treatments that we provide and theoretically what they would be billed if they were to be billed outward. And then we populate numbers on that. We put that in front of them to say, hey, you know, we have theoretically saved you X amount of days away from work. We have saved you X amount of dollars from being billed by an outside source, you know, compared to whatever the flat rate is, the flat rate contract. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of one of the really big things that we do. And then that's also a really good opportunity for us to show them programs and projects we're working on. What strides have we made in our ergonomics program? What behaviors have we noticed, the trends of those behaviors, and now we see it trending downward to safer behavior? What corrective actions have we noticed that we've helped implement? We recognize whether it's an ergonomic tool or some other safety procedure that could be implemented, a change to the operation. We document that and we kind of put that in front of them as well too. So I guess at the end of it, to most simply put it, we're just documenting every little thing that we do, and then we are putting it in front of them to walk them through, what we do. But the way to take that a step further is to actually show the impact. Step one is to say, hey, this is everything we did. And you could kind of tally it and quantify it. Okay, great. Now what's the impact? That's when it goes back to that first part I mentioned of, we saved X amount of dollars, X amount of days away from work. So the ROI reporting, the return on investment is huge for us.
And I think what clinicians often forget is like what you said, really you're just documenting what you did and then taking that extra step to show what is that dollar amount. I mean, we should, and a lot of ATs do pretty good about it, is we already document what we do. Mm-hmm. So just being able to add that little extra step about showing what the value of that is could be huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like you said, we're documenting everything we do. So the two questions I'd have is kind of what you start to say, one, are we putting that in front of people to say, hey, this is everything I've done? And then number two, are you taking that step further to correlate it and show the impact? So just between those two general ideas, those two general practices, that's something that I'd love to see athletic trainers begin to wrap their minds around a bit and put into practice on a more regular basis. Absolutely.
I think too, it kind of forces higher ups to understand what we are doing with, because if you don't show what you're doing, they don't necessarily know. For example, I just got a new job at the end of last year, and there was a time period. There was 2 weeks where there was no athletic trainer at the school. There's supposed to be 2 full-time and 2 part-time. But there's no athletic trainer at all, so it fell on the athletic director. And after I had come into the picture and actually took the job and started working, she said that the 2 weeks that we didn't have an athletic trainer, she kind of had to take on the duties of all the administrative stuff that we do, especially with COVID, that she really knew about but didn't actually see down to the detail what we were responsible for. So she was saying that those 2 weeks really, she understood, wow, like this athletic trainers create such a value. And not that we should be completely taking athletic trainers out of the picture so that you can see what our value is, but in a different way, trying to figure out, okay, how do I show my value with the things that I'm already doing?
Going off that, I think it's about being proactive. I don't know that many people in an administrative position, especially within more traditional settings, are looking at that. I don't think they think to look at it. I don't know if they care enough to look at it. I don't want to say it like that necessarily. They just don't really think about it probably. So I think it's about being proactive, put something in front of them and recommend to them, hey, I'd love an opportunity to sit down and discuss this with you, to just bring you into some things that I'm working on, let you be aware of that. And it's not in a way to show off and say, well, look at me, look at everything I'm doing for you. I think if it's phrased in a way to become a strategic partner, to say, hey, I'd like to put some things in front of you of what I'm working on because I'd like some help in understanding where some additional opportunities are. I'd love to be able to build something out and grow this. That's kind of showing them, again, that you're being a strategic partner and you're asking their input and you're bringing them into the conversation as well, too, rather than just simply putting something in front of their face to say, look at everything I did. So a lot of it's also the approach and the expectation kind of that you're setting around it and how you engage with them on. But it's hard for me to imagine. I don't think I'm being naive here. It's hard for me to imagine that you approach any leader, any administrator with any kind of power in their position, you approach them in that manner, that they don't engage in that it wouldn't be productive in some manner. So yeah, I think a lot of it is on us to just be proactive.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that is sometimes the tough part, because especially when you think about the traditional ATs, just because of how hours can get crazy, to want to be able to be that proactive, and dedicate just a little bit extra time. But is if you're willing to do that, the rewards that can come from that are, I would almost say, worth it.
Yeah, and look, I get it. We as athletic trainers, we are naturally inclined to be reactive. Now, look, there might be some listening and thinking like, I do a ton to be proactive and prevent injuries and stuff. And look, maybe people do. So I don't want to overstate and make it too much of a blanket statement. But I think inherently, and I could speak to myself early on, especially being a student, we're largely reactive. We hang out in the athletic training room and wait for people to come in to get treatment. We're on the sidelines, and once an injury happens, then we, go out and respond. So I think we're largely reactive for the most part. And so I think it's a little bit of against our nature, and it goes back to that education and our training. We just aren't really, I don't think we're educated or trained to have that kind of mindset. I think we need to recognize that mindset now and start to develop it a bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Ready for the action?
Yeah, I was just about to get into my transition about it's time for some action. All right, what's our action item?
Mike, what do you recommend for athletic trainers who are looking to transition to a non-traditional setting?
To simply put it, just network. That is simply meaning reaching out to people to develop a relationship, and that really could just take the form of asking questions. Just ask a ton of questions. It's great to be inquisitive. I think we really need to be inquisitive. Again, we need to be proactive. So, I think it's important that you look to seek guidance and ask questions from some that have experience that, are familiar with the setting. That could mean joining a social media page. When you're on there reaching out to individuals, going online, whether it's a company like my company, for example, or going to a page, an association page, and there's someone that they might recognize that has experience in this in the emerging or non-traditional setting, send them an email. Reach out and email. You'll find a lot of times people are in these positions because they want to answer these questions. They're kind of waiting for it. I'm a young professional committee member for one of the states over here because I want people to engage. And, unfortunately, I've had very, very, very low volume of people reaching out. And again, that's why I'm trying to be proactive here. So, really just network as much as possible, talk to as many people as you can, ask as many questions as you can. And again, active listening, asking questions with the intent to understand and not just simply respond as well too, but really seek to learn.
And I'm sure maybe learning a little bit about OSHA would probably help too, right?
Yeah. Look, it would, but I don't know that I would recommend even my worst enemy to go to OSHA's page and say, take a look on those 2 pages and tell me what you think, because you will just get lost and be like, what the heck am I reading? So look, if you're adventurous and you're super inquisitive, look, I go for it. I empower you. Go for it, man. Go on OSHA's page and poke around and see what you can come up with. OSHA first aid guidelines. That's a good place to start. Look at first aid guidelines and see if you can understand that. Now, if you're lucky, you're working to people, you could ask someone else to explain it to you, and then they could break it down for you better, probably.
I remember over the summer, I was looking into kind of getting our bloodborne pathogens for the ATs just down on paper and what exactly we needed to do. And yeah, I found myself on OSHA's website and oh, this is terrible. I'm lost. I don't know what I'm looking for.
Yeah, how much did you learn there? How much did you feel you actually took away?
Not much. Yeah, where's my CEUs for this?
Yeah, okay. I was gonna say that sounds about right. That sounds about right. Yeah, thank you guys, really. I mean, first off, I think it's a great thing you guys are doing. I think it's great to have a community of athletic trainers that get together to talk about anything and everything. I think things like this is incredible, that there could be a community for athletic trainers that come and listen to something. And hopefully some people found this, interesting enough. And hey, look, I myself as well, I don't know if you have, show notes or something you could put information in, but I'm happy to share my contact information. People could email me and, we could get a conversation going. I just want to answer questions to people. I really do. I just want people to be well informed. I want them to feel good about their profession, where they're at. So thank you guys. I think this is awesome. Thank you for having me.
So like Mike was saying, if you are interested in contacting or networking with someone in the industrial setting, we are putting Mike's email and contact information down in the show notes below, where you'll also find where our Facebook group is, where you can network with other clinicians who are industrial and non-industrial. Facebook.com/group/AG Corner Podcast. We also have an Instagram because we do every other episode as education or stories. So this one was an education episode. Next week, we're going back to our stories. If you want to submit a story, head over to our Instagram stories where we tell you what the next episode's going to be. We provide some prompts for you to kind of get those minds working and give us your experiences.
Get the blood flow going to the brain, ready to go.
Yes. So yeah, you got anything else to add, Randy?
Nope, that was perfect. Thank you for helping us showcase athletic training behind the tape. Bye.